back, everyone, to Connecting Conversations. We are back. It feels like forever.
And yet,
Literally,
just a few months. How
just
strange.
a tad, just a tad. But we're back and we are rolling through 2024 in good spirits, good health, and ready to conquer what 2024 has to bring for us. So we're hoping that you all had an exceptional break. I feel like by the time this releases, it's going to be almost 2 months in the year, and we're talking about the New Year and Christmas as if it was yesterday. But hey
Right.
ho, we move. But you haven't heard our voices in a while, so Happy New Year wherever you're listening, and I hope that January and the start of February is treating you well, or
Mm.
whenever we release this. But yeah. So because we haven't been here for a while, I think we need a little bit of a refresh, if I'm correct, Carla. I think we just need
Yes.
to let them know what they're in for this season with us. So this is going to be a really short podcast, just reintroducing ourselves, reintroducing our brand and why we're doing this and what we're doing and the plans that we have for this year, and hoping that you will come along with us on the journey and participate, connect with us, continue to share your stories, continue to be enlightened about the people that we have coming on the podcast in the future, and sharing all that we have to offer really this season. I don't know, Carla, do you have anything to tell them? Is there anything you're excited about?
Yeah, I think it's incredible that we firstly celebrated a year last year. We made it through, and here we are still. And I think it's always great to take stock of kind of where we've been. I know we're pretty good at doing that. Like, let's just revisit the small moments, the tiny mounds before they become mountaintops. But every single one of those stepping stones in a trajectory upwards has been really exciting for us. And I think that's become a bit of a culture of what we do, is to reflect on that. And I think looking back in our last year of conversations that we've had, which was incredible, consistently pretty much almost every week we had an episode, which was so
Yeah.
great from the middle of last year onwards. And just the depth and the kind of wide breadth and range of enriching conversations was so incredible. And it's been wonderful to have kind of the guests that we've had on our platform and share their stories. And we speak about stories and we're like, I think it's the one thing that for me just never gets old. We are defined
Yeah.
by them, we are inspired by them, we are continuously changing them, we're
Yeah.
narrating them, they are evolving through us all the time. And yet they
Mm.
are the most powerful things that help, that kind of like trigger off synapses almost
Yeah.
and spark off one person's story to another, because everybody's story isn't just linear either. It is involved with so many other stories, and there's this
Yeah.
crossing all the time. And I love
Yeah.
that we get to be facilitators of that in some way with what we share
Mm.
here with Connecting Conversations, and also use and understand the power of that tool in
Yeah.
using it for really good change and driving impact to
Yeah.
inspire people to go further along in their own journey, or inspire, people pivoting in different directions, mindset shifts, etc., because
Mm.
these things are life altering. So it is such a blessing, and I think such a privilege that we get to do this. And I'm so
Yeah.
excited about this year. And even more so is the fact is we started kind of a fire with our podcast, but we're looking to evolve that further. And I think it'll be really good if you shared with everybody just what are your hopes and aspirations for what we want the podcast to kind of do and touch on this year.
Yeah, I think this year we really, like you said, we really want to evolve. We started off on a good foot last year, in especially towards the middle half of last year. We really amplified our work and engaged with incredible people, and even have our own kind of internal conversations,
Mm-hmm.
um, and solo podcasts and one-to-one co-founder podcasts, which was great. But this year we really wanted to be a lot more focused. We really want to set the tone where we talk about things that are more relatable to our guests coming onto the podcast, so that not only that we talk about the high level kind of life about diversity and inclusion and what that looks like in organizations, but what does that look like on a granular can't speak granular um kind of life dynamic experience. And I
Mm,
think with what's happening in the world, and I know there's a lot of people, going through different challenges and going through different seasons, and we want to be able to accommodate and facilitate in some way some of those discussions and provide support, guidance, and advice by bringing people on to talk about what they're going through and hopefully inspiring others, but also taking stock, and
mm,
acknowledging that growth or that season that they're in. So this year we've actually came up with 4 key themes that we want to really focus on, in the hopes that would, you know, drive further conversations. So even after you listen to our podcast, you go away actually reflecting and having these conversations in your
mm,
own circles and identifying and speaking about how does that relate in other people's lives and seeing the differences of how that manifests as well.
mm,
Because I think once our conversations are complete, it's great to have that ripple effect and that continuation to happen in order for us to really make change and break down boundaries and walls that that are set up. So yeah, so with no further ado, the 4 key themes that we've decided to focus on this year. And first, and we're going to break those down for you as well. So as we go through each of them, we'll kind of give a little bit of a backstory as to
mm.
why this particular theme, so you have an idea as well. So the first theme that I am really, really excited to get involved in is around relationships. Now, no matter where you go, what spaces you occupy, there will always be a relationship to be formed, and there will be a relationship that unfortunately may be kind of, what's the word, destroyed, or um, maybe a little bit of a challenge to navigate. So we really want to get into the nitty gritty of what that means and what that looks like. And I think for me, why this theme is particularly important is because at this stage in my life, I'm trying to navigate those different types of relationships. So from
Mm.
business, corporate relationships, to friendships, to romantic relationships, um, and so on and so forth, to family relationships, for instance. I'm in that season where I'm trying to navigate what that would look like on all those different levels. And is there a way that I could find a streamline for all those different connections? So I'm really
I think
excited.
that is the big question that I think everybody is asking. And I think, like you said,
100%.
it does feel like it is quite a universal question, right? So
Yeah.
it's good to be talking about it. I don't think that we will ever expire that conversation because uh,
No.
it's such a like a baseline wiring of what it means to be human, and I'm sure you've heard
100%.
that really famous kind of saying when they say like nobody's an island, like literally
Mm,
we can't get anywhere without some form of relationship in our lives to move on. It's the relationship that we had with people that have educated us, mentored us, coached
mm,
us. It's the relationships that we've had with our teachers. It's the relationships that we've had with family. Those can be super complex. They really define how even how we see ourselves and that inner voice that we end up talking and navigating ourselves
mm.
and how we navigate the world. There is just so
Yeah.
many crisscross moments about all of
And
that.
even down to the relationship with yourself. What does that look like?
100%. What does
Taking
that look like?
taking care
Yeah.
of yourself. And I think everyone has their own different meanings and different understandings of what that looks like. But even when we explore this topic, we're also exploring as our relationships with people who are different to us. So our
Mm,
relationship, how do we approach people who may be from a different cultural background, or who may have a different life experience to us, or who
yeah.
may be in a very senior position to us, and so on and so forth. So I think, relationships, no matter where you go, it's the center of our being ultimately. And we really want to be able to kind of start and initiate some of those
Mhm.
complex
Yeah, very.
questions and dynamics that we really
Mm,
want to hear how people are, kind of navigating that field, and how what advice we can kind of bring to the table for others who may be struggling or who may be navigating, like myself, because I'm putting myself in the hot seat, but I'm also putting myself in the listening seat because I need some learnings from
Mm.
all these different aspects. But Carla, what about yourself? I know we've had conversations, but you have a very different perspective to me, even when we talk about relationships.
Yeah, for sure. It's an exciting one. And as I mentioned before, like, I think it's a universal topic. In some way or form, we're impacted by relationships. It just might look different. And I'm glad that you shared in what you just said there, like, we're going to take some time really examining those diverse dynamics and what those can look like and what should we be doing sometimes in navigating it. How can we be encouraged? And I think what really encouraged me about what you said just now is like, we need to come with almost like a perception and a posture of almost like humility into it,
Yeah.
because we are never going to know all the answers, but it's always worth being further enriched and growing in these capacities. Like, how can I find navigating, you know, turning up for really complex or difficult conversations, confrontation? Like, so much of that comes down to, I think, our culture background. Being British, we don't necessarily like a full-on confrontation, but being someone who comes from, you know, a mixed or and an ethnic background as well, there's a different dynamic, and everybody in that background is very quick to tell you how upset they are. How do we navigate that in a very multicultural world that we're living in now? It's not the same. And also, I love that you shared about, it's like, what about this relationship with yourself? All this kind of, you know, talk and nuance about self-care, self-awareness is relatively new. Go back 50 years, people had very different language and even approaches and concepts about this idea. And we talk about things like, yeah, these things then filter into things like mental health. And that's a hard thing to navigate. But we now have the tools because of this generation, this era, with technology and people. It's like buzzword. Yes, we all want to talk about self, you know, development and personal growth. That wasn't always the case. Like I said, just a generation or two beyond where we are now. And what does that
Yeah.
look like? Because that means that we've got a generation that's almost semi-fluent in this as the world is evolving. But we're
Mm.
also brushing shoulders with a generation that has no clue how to do that, because this was not in their foundational upbringing and basics of, you know, their engagement with the world around them. And it's
Yeah. Yeah.
navigating those, they just add so many layers. So I'm excited to be talking about how all of these things actually impact us. It's impacting our workplaces where we are
Yeah.
multi-generational, trying to
Mm.
drive economics forward. We are multi-generational in spaces where, like, the style of people learning and adapting to new things. You know, we're multi-generation in a world that is evolving so quick, whereas before, for one shift to take maybe 30 years, it's now taking 3 months or 3 years to do. And that means everybody's having to catch up. And all of
Yeah.
these things, I think, are really impacting relationships, impacting our dating. It's still new for me about, you know, internet dating, but this is literally how everybody's doing it now.
We're gonna have a whole segment on that, people.
But you know
You
what I
are
mean, right?
great.
And now and I think, you know, getting older, I'm going to be a wonderful landmark age this year, and I'm very excited about it because it's great. It's a gift that I've been given, that I get
Yeah.
to celebrate another decade this year, which is huge. But what I will say is, like, even in all of that, it's really figuring out, like, my gosh, how much has changed and where's my place in it, and
Yeah.
asking myself, you know, it's not the way that it used to be. Life is, I call it life is lifing. I'm sure you've heard that term before, but it's tough to make new and meaningful relationships when
100%.
everybody's so busy trying to do this life thing. We are
Yeah.
pulled into kind of like so many different kinds of expectations. The way the world has evolved, you know, we don't just, you know, turn up and exist. Everyone has to go to work somehow. They have to survive. Like, living costs are really different than what they were maybe 50 years ago. Most households, if they have a partner, like, both have to work. Generally speaking, it's not always like that. And
Yeah.
then they have families, or they have other commitments that they have to keep themselves, their finger on the button, to keep relevant and to keep up with the way that the world is going. It's difficult to forge new relationships in these latter parts of your life. Like, how do I do that? I didn't keep hold of any of my friends from high school. I kept some of them from university, but, like, how do you forge new ones? And that's not a bad thing. I think literally
Yeah.
you get to, you learn to the stage where you get to an understanding of yourself. Like, some friends are there for certain seasons, and what those boundaries look like in terms of my inner circle and where you stand in that. Is this a
Yeah.
friendship that can be into, some of my most intimate spaces that are close to me, or are they on the slightly outside circle and acquaintance level? Like, how do we determine that? It's this new conversation about boundaries and all these things, and why it's okay to be like, actually, if the relationship isn't like two-way edifying or two-way, beneficial. And that's not that we should be looking at relationships always as transactions either, because sometimes
Yeah.
there's always going to be an imbalance when one person is going through maybe a stronger season than the other. But the fact is,
Yeah.
it can't stay like that all the time. And how do you start determining that? That when those
Mm,
reach kind of like natural ends, and it's okay, even though it's sad, but like it leaves us room to progress on. And what does that look
mm.
like? How do we leave one season well to go into something new? Because the
It,
reality is that how we've left one season or one relationship, or how we're navigating those relationships, is going to influence or impact the ones that we think we're going to try and build in the future, unless
it's
we've
so
dealt with some of the issues. And all of these
100%.
things, I feel, are so important to continuously talk about, especially in a world that I feel, I don't know about you, but I feel like it's getting too fast for me now. The way that the pace of how
Yeah.
everything goes, how it
No.
evolves, what people's expectations are from each other. Um,
Mm,
so I'm excited to talk about that, about the relationships. I feel like I wanted a big spiel there, but really the lid just open and off the pot so that
mm,
we can really explore this in as much as possible, because I think
mm.
everybody would benefit from that. I would benefit from that. And anyone else that wants to join the ride in learning together would be incredible.
No, you said two key things that we are going to implement and talk about, and that's expectations and boundaries, because
Hmm, hmm.
essentially those are the key foundations of a relationship. What are the boundaries, and what do you expect from me? And I
Hmm,
think because the world has evolved and changed so quickly, we kind of lose focus and forget about those initial foundational conversations that we should be having, even when it comes to families. And I think it's so complex, even in a family situation, as to where do you put your boundary, like with your parent or with
Mm,
your brother, with your auntie, with your, godmother, and so on and so forth. Because we're so, I can only talk from a Caribbean cultural background. It's always respect your elders, that's it. But as I've gotten older and I've experienced life in a whole different way, it's a two-way street.
mm, mm,
So yes, I will respect my elders, but my elders also have the responsibility of respecting me as a person, no
mm,
matter what
mm,
my age is or no
mm.
matter what my viewpoint is. So I think there is space for both, and there is definitely, and we talk about a lot diversity and inclusion from a cultural background. There's so many
Yes.
differences and complexities that impede that. So it,
Mhm.
you know what, we're not gonna go it. This can be the
We
podcast.
can see we're ready to roll. Like, we're just so
Uh,
ready, like waiting to just like get
we
off the start line with this. But it's going to be a great set of
we
conversations. I'm really
it
excited.
definitely is, and will be. And we have some amazing guests lined up to come in and talk to us. Some amazing roundtables, which we're gonna trial.
So
It's
excited.
gonna be. I am so excited for this topic. I feel like I have so much to talk about. Maybe because it's the season I'm in, I don't know, but it's going to be an exciting series that we're going to bring to you. Secondly, we're also going to talk about transitions. So,
Mm,
whilst we talk about relationships and our seizing in different relationships, we're going to talk holistically about what does a transition look like in someone's life. So, from career, from singlehood to parenthood, from being single to married, and
mhm, mhm.
from going as a graduate into your first corporate job, and what
Yeah.
kind of experiences, challenges, successes, and life that goes on in between in these
Right,
different
right.
transitions. So that's a really, really exciting topic as well that we're going to indulge ourselves into, and have people from all walks of life coming in and bringing their experience as to what a transition means to them, and what did that look like, and what were the benefits of a transition. Because when we hear transition, we hear change, and sometimes people look at change quite
Mm,
negatively, but we
yeah,
also want to look at
true.
the positive thing, because
Hmm.
you hear a lot, And I don't know about you, but I know in growing up, it's just like, oh my gosh, you've changed. You think you're better than us, or you think you did. You, and it's just like, no, but I've changed for the better. In fact,
Yeah.
it's not a bad thing, and it's not something to look negatively or grudge me for. So I think, yeah, that's a whole,
Yeah. And dealing with
another
that with such a,
topic that we
yeah. Yeah. And dealing with it with, I think
what
what
were
you're
you going to say?
describing is like, yeah, no, that's cool. Sorry. Like, I was just going to say on the back end of what you're saying, and I think what the question that I think really comes through that topic is like, how do we navigate that with a sense of grace? Because grace for
Mm,
ourselves
mm,
and grace for other people, that it's like change is difficult, like you said, for every human being. We're just not really happy when it comes to change. That could be anything. Changing jobs. Oh, you've changed my toilet paper brand. I'm not happy. Like it could be anything. Humans can get really
yeah.
weird about change. They can. You move my chair. This is not the chair that I sit in every. This is not my parking space. Humans are really funny about change. So I'm excited to talk about
Mm,
that, and also thinking about, we talk about transitions, and particularly in the D&I space, is there's the idea of like we have to pivot, kind of just almost segue sometimes from, I might be the same age as everybody else, I might be someone who has the same qualification as everyone else, but my cultural background, and I might have migrated a country, is completely different kind of, transitions that are
mm,
going on there, adjusting to your
yeah.
environment, which can change that. And we're living in a global society now. People are more likely to go
Yeah.
abroad and take jobs at professional level than probably any other time in history.
Mm,
How are they dealing with those transitions? The world is not all Western. The world is not all one way. And how do you navigate those nuances that you get the best out of your experiences? You're learning from them, as well as still finding ways to retain that sense of self in all of that change. And
mm,
that one, I can't wait to turn up for that conversation. Well, I can't wait to turn up for them all, but particularly for that, because I feel like in an era now where we see so much change that happens at such shorter periods of time, like laws change
mhm,
within 5 months, within 5 years,
mhm,
or shifts can
mhm.
happen very quickly. Whereas because we're in a digital era and it's an instant button, sometimes that means it can
Yeah.
literally shift the trajectory of life. For example, we just came out of COVID 3 years ago, and we've shifted, and like the whole world looks completely different now. Everybody has been impacted. That, what are we doing about that transition
Mhm.
coming out of it in
Yeah.
terms of the economic space and business, and how we should be looking at like what's our lifelong plans for how we want to build wealth and
Mhm.
to take care of ourselves in an era where the idea of, historically speaking, you stay in the same job for 20 years, where that worked once. We can see now that people's involvement is like that doesn't always work for everybody. Huge
Yeah.
transitions, huge
Yeah.
transitions. I can't wait to be talking about that.
It's true. Yeah, and then as you've touched on, the technology advancements that
Hmm.
has come as a result has kind of sped up a lot of these transitions from
Yeah,
happening.
yeah.
And I think one thing that we would also like to bring to the table when we talk about transitions is transitions going backwards. Because we like to think of transitions always forward
Moving
thinking,
forward.
forward moving. But sometimes a transition can be actually taking a few steps back in order to pivot
Mm,
to go 5 steps forward. And what does that
mm,
look like?
yeah,
I was
yeah.
actually speaking to someone just the other day about this because, you know, they were talking about, oh, I feel like I'm taking a step back, and someone told me that I'm going further away from my goals rather than closer to my goals. And I said, it's just a transitionary phase. Like, it's okay to take a few steps back. It's okay
Mm,
to, say no to things. It's okay to place yourself in a space where you feel like you can elevate yourself to go even further. So taking a few steps back isn't as negative as people perceive it to be. So I'm really interested to also explore that further, because transition is not always an upward trajectory, but sometimes you kind of slide backwards, and
mm,
it's how do we deal with that in that space as
yeah,
well. So it's crazy. A lot of these topics are so deep and so nuanced, and we will never get to the bottom of it. But we hope by having these open, honest, safe conversations with you all, you would be able to learn something and connect and relate to some of what we're
yeah,
talking about here too.
absolutely.
So that brings me on to our third theme topic, and that is success. What does success look like? What does
Mm,
success mean? Does success equates to wealth? And if so,
right.
what is wealth? Does
Yeah.
success means just simply, being able to go out for a walk and that's a success for your day? So I think in this day and age, we've been so hung up upon success being this grand big gesture or thing to have and thing to achieve, but sometimes successes are small wins that happens day to day, like you showed up
100%.
to work. Congrats.
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
that is a success.
I'm
um
looking forward to that topic as well. I think it's really an opportunity to just evaluate where our values are on this
mm,
topic, which I think I am anticipating a wide range of opinion on that, which is going to be exciting to hear, but also to really see like are our expectations about success in healthy spaces. And I
mm,
love that you said like it's going to be determined by contextual circumstances. For
yeah,
someone that has had maybe long-term, health challenges,
yeah.
the idea that they actually were able to go out and walk, they were actually able to turn up in certain kind of capacities that maybe they couldn't do before, are huge successes. But it's not the type of successes that we see constantly bombarding us through our social media, and the way that it's kind of put in bright lights on the main stage, is it? So I'm
Yeah.
excited to talk about that. I think it's an important conversation. It's important to take stock, because I think living according to, also, I'm sure you've heard the term keeping up with the Joneses, is not the reality for most people. So what does it look like for most people to win? And I think everybody has the right to win,
Mhm.
but what that winning looks like
Yeah,
really is different for every person.
yeah.
So
And
taking
there's
a kind
space
of a
for
deep
everyone
dive,
to talk.
100%. And everybody's top looks so different, because everybody's wired for other things. Their giftings are wired in different directions,
Mhm.
and they're meant to occupy spaces that no one else can. So that must mean there's space. We just need to figure out what that is. And I'm just excited to be
Yeah.
able to use the opportunity to really explore that in sensitive ways, in affirming ways,
Mhm.
and in ways that really inspire people about like, I am in my lane and I can own that.
100%. 100%. I love that. And it, again, like I said, it's so deep, it's so nuanced, it's so complex, and we will explore it as far as we can. But
Mm,
what I would also like to say is a lot of this is open to interpretation. So nothing that we say
yeah.
here is truth or knowledge or facts, but it's all about showcasing lived experiences and
Mm,
showcasing that that difference can exist in a world that makes us feel like difference shouldn't. And we want to
mm,
make space for that difference to
mm.
happen. So that brings me on to my final fourth theme topic, whatever we want to call it, series um, of this year's podcast, and that is finance. Now, everywhere you turn, there is the money talk, and everyone wants that extra £1,000, £100, £10 in their bank account. And this is a really interesting topic because what we've learned about money derives from the backgrounds and the cultural and the
Mm,
spaces that we grew up in and how that has framed us
yeah.
to look at money. I know from my experience, there was this saying that money is the devil and it's evil, and we've painted such spiritual kind of disassociation but association to money, when in the Bible it doesn't even talk about money in that way. It talks
Mm,
about greed and what that can
mm.
do for you when
Yeah,
you think
yeah.
excess is much more than your spiritual connection. So
Mhm.
it we our theme, or well, sub theme for this is morals versus money, because let me tell you, there is no way we should be losing our morals and our values in corporate, in family situations, in romantic
Mm.
relationships to money.
Yeah.
So
And
we really want to
there's so
decouple.
much, yes, so much in that. And I'm excited that even if you just to put it like just as the line by itself, finance, it can feel kind of boring. And in a business
Yeah.
environment, it's like it's the bottom line for everyone. But actually there is, again, we've said this before, and a lot of what we're talking about is there is a relationship towards that. There is a cultural relationship with it. There's like you said, an ethical relationship towards it. There is a corporate relationship towards it. There's a domestic relationship towards it. There's just like an aspirational relationship towards it.
Mm,
And I'm excited about us digging through those lenses,
Yeah.
and really looking and exploring, you know, where people are at about it, or even aware about some of the biases we have about it, or some of the
Mm,
reservations we have about it, and what our values look like when it comes to this subject. Because, you know, they talk about money makes the world go around,
yeah.
sure, but it's going around in very different ways around this world. And I think,
Mhm.
like you said, that close tension between morals and finance, and
Mm,
morals and values about how we engage with this very
yeah.
defining thing. So no one gets away from it. Everybody needs, you know, a level of materialism in order to survive in this world. What does
Mhm.
that look like for you, and where it can take us? And it's not
Yeah.
about the thing itself, it's the love of it. It's what does it like invoke in us in terms of our values and the people that
Yeah.
we are when we're around it. So it's going to be it's going to be interesting. That's the word I'm going to say. I'm
Yeah.
intrigued. It's going to be interesting. I'm
I'm here
excited.
for it. I'm here for the speakers and our guests that are coming to discuss it on a very practical level. Like Carla said, we're not here for the boring talk about 1 + 1 = 2. We're not interested in the
So
mathematical
much
side.
more.
Maybe there will be some math, but we're here to talk about culturally, what does that look like, and
Mm,
how has finance, money impact us as a society, but has also impact our understanding and our
mhm,
knowledge and our power and access to things, because we think about money as well in terms of funding and who has access to that funding and who's more likely to gain funding
mm,
in business spaces. And we've seen it time and time again that women only receive a very small proportion of funding
yeah,
for their businesses. So we're going to look at a whole host of different
yeah,
aspects.
yeah.
Again, we probably won't get to all of it, but we're hoping to introduce you to some of these different elements, these different understandings and topics for us to really raise the profile, and maybe make the finance talk a bit more interesting. um, so that is our 4 series themes topics that we are going to explore throughout 2024.
Mhm.
I'm really excited to kind of get down and dirty in it, because it's going to be very intriguing, as you said. But we're hoping that these conversations also leave you inspired, empowered, and motivated to go out and make change in the world. So
Mm, mm, mm.
yeah, be prepared. We're here for it, and
I
you will
love it so
see
much.
our branding on social media, specifically Instagram, will change. It's going to be very centered around the podcast that we're going to have. Um, and the conversations that we will have. So be prepared for a whole new look, feel to the way we're approaching things this year. But yeah, Carla, any final words? Tell what are you most excited for? Like, if you can name one thing.
That is a good question. I think I'm always excited about. I think we haven't changed our tagline and our mission. I
No.
think what I'm really excited about is to really see how these stories evolve and how
Yeah.
people to kind of be empowered and to rise in their world. So that is our ongoing tagline. It hasn't changed, but I'm excited about the involvement in kind of how we're branching out into exploring that this year.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to hear just a plethora of diverse opinions on some really key issues that
Yeah.
I don't think there'll be much space for people to say that I can't connect with something. So I'm excited to see how that really impacts people and how they enjoy coming on the journey alongside us through
Yeah.
our exploration of these topics. I'm excited about that.
100%. Amazing. Well, we hope you're excited as we are, because I am so itching to get into some of these conversations. I tell Carla about it all the time. Like, I am raring to go. I'm ready to lay it on the table, but I'm also ready to listen, and
Mm.
learn and be inspired and be empowered as well. So we hope to see you all very soon for the launch of our first conversation on relationships. So keep an eye out for that. But until then, we hope that you stay safe, you're blessed, and we'll see you soon. Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.